Good evening, everybody. My name's Glenn Johnston. We will be starting the webinar shortly. We're just waiting on a couple of more people to join online. So feel free to grab a cup of tea or a nice glass of water and then come back for the start in a couple of minutes. We will also be recording tonight's session so that those people who can't attend for whatever reason have an opportunity to view the other content. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. We will commence the webinar now. Warami Midigar, which in my Darug Dalang or language means hello friends. My name is Glenn Johnston and I am a proud Parramatta man of the Darug Nation. Parramatta might sound familiar to some people, and that is the traditional name for the city of Parramatta. Providing an acknowledgement of country is both an honour and a privilege. As we gather for this webinar, physically dispersed but virtually constructed, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the Pemel, or the lands of the Darug people where I am today, as well as the traditional custodians of the Pemel that you are on. The Darug Nation covers what we know as the Greater Sydney Basin, not defined by lines on a map, but by the natural boundaries. The Hawkesbury River to the north, the Nepean River to the west, and the Georges River to the south. The Darug Nation is made up of 29 clans. Aboriginal peoples have been the custodians of the lands and waterways of Australia and have carried educational practices and storytelling for many thousands of years. I pay sincere respects to my elders past and present for keeping our culture alive and take great pride that I am part of the longest living culture on Mother Earth. Please pause for a moment to reflect and to remember the many that have gone before us, the ones walking beside us, and others soon to be following in our footsteps. Sharing what we have and caring for each other is my people's way of life. Our family and our friends are our community. It is a practice we have continued that has flowed on from one generation to the next for more than 2,000 generations. The greatest gift you can ever give someone is your time, and we all give so much. All of us need to continue to make a difference, to give and to also receive. Working together and not in isolation, we create a true healing. Let's look back on a legacy we are proud of. All of us can bring about positive change now and into the future. To make that future possible, let us all draw upon my people's spirits as we continue on our journey. May my people's spirits walk with you and guide for you as we stride forward for all of us. Finally, I would also like to reflect upon and remember the tens of thousands of Aboriginal people of the stolen generations, many of whom never made it home. The land we are on, the land where we live, work, breathe, eat and sleep on always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Thank you. Now, once again, good evening to tonight's webinar. Now, many of you know about Wellbeing Australia, but some may not. Wellbeing Australia is committed to champion the integration of wellbeing principles and practices into families, education networks, and workplaces in Australia. Our organisation is a not-for-profit, membership and community-based. It's assisted by some government grants. We have an Australia-wide focus, and our community is as diverse as can be. We believe in positive, proactive, and holistic well-being. And this is made up of social, emotional, physical, spiritual, and financial elements. We have created the Wellbeing series, and this covers the breadth of the Australian community, inclusive of all, and especially including our first responders, both current and veteran, the education sector, families, and professionals. We have a dedicated focus to emotional and social well-being of families in all forms. We also foster solution-focused strategies to support holistic well-being. And we have monthly events and quarterly members think tanks for sharing and also for facilitating workshops. Now, as I mentioned at the outset, we are recording tonight's session, and that is so we capture all of the sharing and the insights and knowledge, and will allow both the attendees to review it at a later date, but also those people who could not attend to review the webinar. We will also issue certificates of attendance, and these will be sent out following the event. Please add any comments you have in the Q&A section, as this remains anonymous, and the chat section can be seen by everyone. We'll have an opportunity to do a Q&A at the end of tonight's session, but Darren, our presenter tonight, has also asked if you have got any questions along the way, feel free to ask those. So don't necessarily wait until the end. If it's really a burning question, by all means ask that, and I'll get Darren to respond to that if he can. Now, so over to tonight's topic, and that is of hope and optimism through challenge. I warmly welcome our speaker, Darren Cox, who is an enthusiastic thought leader with a depth of experience in culture change and educational practices within schools. Darren values the connection between spiritual values and professional well-being. His optimism and enthusiasm are contagious, as is his passion for innovation and creative solutions. Please welcome Darren.
Thank you very much, Glenn. Really appreciate that introduction, and also for Welcome to Country was really amazing. And I had a good chat with Glenn beforehand about his amazing artwork as well, which is just absolutely beautiful. So good evening to everyone. I trust you've had a great day. I think the things that Glenn said are some of the things that I've done. But who am I? I'm a dad. I've got 3 teenage kids. Actually, I tell a lie. I've now got 1 adult child, 20, and 2 teenage children. And anyone who's got children in the audience tonight will know the ups and downs and the reason why we need hope and optimism, because every day with teenagers is a challenge. So we heard from Wellbeing Australia that they are about positive, proactive, and holistic approach to wellbeing. And I think that some of their key words, and one of them is that sense of being proactive. And so a very Australian approach to life is that notion of, no worries, she'll be right, take it as it comes. And I would suggest that actually we need to be a little bit more intentional about how we handle life. Because if we don't really have a sense of a direction, then actually when challenge comes, then actually what have we got? So for me, it's actually about what are we anchoring our hope in? I went out on a family holiday once, and there's a lot of weaknesses that I have in life, and one of them is that I'm hopeless at actually just doing stuff around the place. Anyway, we thought we'd go out on this houseboat holiday with another family, and the first day was wonderful. And we got to the end of the first day, we dropped anchor, and sat down on the deck to have some drinks, and off we go to bed. And sort of 3/4 of the way through the evening, found ourselves going, "Ooh, what's going on here?" All of a sudden there was waves, there was rocking, and we thought that we were in one of the canals of the Gold Coast. And actually, little did we know that the anchor hadn't quite taken place, hadn't actually sort of taken to, and we were drifting now out of the canal in a houseboat on our way out into the ocean. And we would all know that houseboats aren't meant for that. And all of a sudden the waves became somewhat concerning. Needless to say, we're all safe and we're all well. But actually what it is for me actually gave me a really, just that sense of actually we need to anchor our hope in something. You know, for lots of us, we can put it in our job. We can put it in our careers. We can put it in our finances. We can put it in other people, whether that be a spouse or a friend or whoever. But we all would have known at some stage, some of those things are going to let us down. Not every single one of those things are actually there forever and are certain. And in this last however many months, that has certainly come to pass for so many of us. And so what is it that we anchor our hope in? Because whatever that is anchored in, that potentially is going to what is leading to our sense of optimism. So I've got some slides and things I'm going to share once again, also not an area of strength for me. So hang on, just stay with me. Okay, hopefully we can all see that now, and I'll click it onto slideshow, and away we go.
Yep.
So, hope and optimism. A study conducted by researchers at Stanford and UC Berkeley found that people who practice mindfulness meditation, which often involves focusing on the present moment and cultivating a sense of gratitude and compassion, have lower levels of stress and anxiety. The study found that mindfulness meditation can also improve immune function, which can be beneficial for individuals facing health challenges. This sense of mindfulness, we live in a very, very hectic, fast-paced world. And so where is it that we actually get that sense to be still, to focus, to center ourselves? And it's in that sense of spirituality. And we heard that Wellbeing Australia is holistic in its approach. And actually, where's that sense of spirituality, and how do we do that in a world that's full of noise and images around? I'm hoping that just for the next 30 minutes or so, the TV's not on, you don't have the things going in the background, but maybe the next 30 minutes is actually the start of that for yourself. There's so many gyms that have, you know, their transformation, their 8-week transformation sessions. And maybe tonight is a chance just to have that little bit of a reset for the educators in the audience tonight. It's the end of term 1, which is pretty hectic. We're counting down just a couple more days to go. And we're coming up to Easter, which is often a time of forced reflection for people. Or maybe tonight's a chance for us to actually put in some new habits in that place, because for me, it comes to that sense of being proactive. So practicing mindfulness, it doesn't just happen. You're not going to just wake up tomorrow and go, oh, okay, now I think I'm going to be mindful. We actually need to establish habits and practices which we can put into our place. Find yourself a chair in your house. I would hope that for every single one of us, there's that one space in our house, whether it's in the front garden or the back garden or in our bedroom or the parents' retreat or in the front lounge room where there's no kids' toys around, but actually let's have that space that has actually a really calming space. It's actually, and it's a quiet space, and it's your space. Maybe it's actually not in your house. Maybe it's at a park bench. I'm really fortunate to live on the northern beaches, and up on one of the sort of the headlands, there's this awesome park bench that I love to just sit out. I can look down 3 beaches worth, and I sit there with a coffee, and that is an amazing way to either start or finish your day. Put it into your time. Wake up 10 minutes earlier. Maybe on the way to work, instead of listening to talkback radio and things like that, actually, we're going to listen to a meaningful podcast. So we're going to listen to reflection music just to start our day, so that we can actually start with that sense of mindfulness. You know, faith can often be seen in a higher power or divine being, but it can also be viewed as something as believing in something bigger than ourselves. And when we have faith, we have a sense of purpose and direction, and we're able to see beyond our current circumstance to envision a better future. And that perspective can give us the motivation, the hope we need to keep going, even when the road seems difficult. One of the areas that I've found that really helps with that is that sense of, oh, hang on, now I'm trying to work out technology and it's frozen on me. There we go. Albert Einstein says the most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and science. He to whom this emotion is a stranger, who can no longer pause to wonder and stand enwrapped in awe, is as good as dead. His eyes are closed. This knowledge, this feeling is at the center of true religiousness. And in this sense, and in this sense only, I belong in the ranks of truly devout religious men. For me, it's about how do we cultivating that sense of awe and wonder. He has another wonderful quote, is Albert Einstein, and that is to see there's two ways to live. That one is as though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle. So as we pause tonight to talk about hope and optimism, for me, it starts by being rooted in that sense of purpose. It being rooted in that sense of what are we anchoring our faith and our hope in. And so some of that is going to start with this sense of awe and wonder. Why don't you just take a moment? Just take a moment to find what are some of the simple things in life that you may have started to take for granted. Take a moment. What fills you with joy? I should have provided some background music at this point in time. Sorry, I'm not going to sing because that will actually take away that sense of awe and wonder, but hopefully you've got a pad or a pen there, because I'd love us to start being able to actually see some of that sense of awe and wonder. Is it being out in nature? Is it being with your kids? Is it walking your dog? Is it the ocean? Where is it that you can get that sense of awe and wonder? What we look at, what we put our perspective in, is often what we're going to see. We know that when we teach our kids to drive at nighttime, we say, do not look at the oncoming lights. Why don't we want them to look at the oncoming lights? Because your eyes are drawn to them. When you're running on a treadmill, you got to look straight ahead. You don't look at the person on the treadmill to the side because you get the wobbles and you fall over. Actually, we need to keep ourselves on that straight path. So what is it that we are focusing on? It's really interesting as we discuss this notion of optimism. There's this story that is told of a Native American Indian who visited New York City, visiting a friend in New York City. And for anyone who's been in New York before, there's taxi horns honking and there's a subway underneath, and there's often building and construction works going on, and there's just the chatter of a lot of people around. It is a noisy, noisy place. And this Native American Indian's walking down the street with his friend, and he says, "Oh, I hear a cricket." And his friend says, "How can you possibly have heard a cricket in amongst all of this noise and commotion?" He goes, "No, listen, I hear it." And with that, he crossed over the road and he went to where there was a construction site. At the bottom of the construction site was this shrubbery, and he bends down and he looks in, and sure enough, he comes out with a cricket on his hand. And his friend says, "How on earth could you have heard all that through all of this noise and commotion that is going on?" And he said, "It's simple. It's what you're listening for. It's what your perspective is. It's what you're focusing on." And he says, "Watch." With that, he puts his hand in his pocket and he pulls out a few coins, and he drops the coins on the ground, and they tinkle along. For most of us remember the sound of what coins tinkering was. And they tinkle on the ground, and with that, every head within 20 meters turned around to look on the ground to make sure it wasn't their money. And he said, "See, it depends what you're focusing on." And so a question. Psychologists have found that being in awe of something greater than oneself promotes pro-social behavior, and that experiencing a sense of awe promotes loving kindness and magnanimous behavior. Awe is found to promote social behavior, described as positive, helpful, and intended to promote social acceptance and friendship. What is it that we get our awe, that we experience awe and wonder in? What is it that we actually perspective? What is it that we're focusing on? What is it that we are listening for? You can see here from a Cain, if we experience life through the eyes of a child, everything would be magical and extraordinary. Let our curiosity, adventure, and wonder of life never end. Surprises me that as we get older, we become It seems as though the older we become, the more serious and the less lighthearted. It seems as though we become more unbelieving than believing. And it slowly takes away this sense of awe and wonder of everyday life and the things we see around us. We all get mature and we change, and awe and wonder is sort of replaced with a desensitized view of the world. Leonard Cohen once said that as our eyes grow accustomed to sight, they armor themselves against wonder. And I think I wonder if some of the reasons why we've lost that sense of optimism is because we've armored ourselves against wonder, and we've actually become somewhat cynical in our way of being. Stanford University. Individuals had a sense of purpose in their lives, had better mental and physical health outcomes. The study found that people who felt their lives had meaning and purpose were less likely to experience depression, anxiety, and stress. So the question is, what is your sense of purpose? What is that greater sense of purpose? I encourage you now to be intentional, and maybe you've got a journal, and maybe that's a new habit for some of us to look at potentially starting. Maybe if it's not even just writing it in a book, maybe it's actually just putting it in your phone. But actually this sense of journaling your thoughts, journaling what it is that you're striving for, journaling your sense of gratitude daily, weekly, and then having someone that you can actually share that with becomes really, really important. It's really important that as we look to develop sense of hope and optimism, we're not just born with that. There may be some people who are more optimistic by nature, but there are also certain things that we can do to be proactive to ensure that we're looking after our well-being. You know, there's things that we do. We put in practices to be more physically healthy. We put in practices to be more financially healthy. And actually this sense of spirituality and emotional development, actually we need to be really, really intentional around putting practices in to set ourselves up for success in that. And so this sense of hope comes from this greater sense of purpose. So what is your purpose? And I would hope that you're connected to a community that can really, really help you with that. We have never been so happy. If over COVID time, one of the things that we experienced was we've never been so happy to talk to our neighbours in our life. Having a support network is vitally important. And we need to find a way to take our friendships from, how you doing, mate? Yeah, not bad. We actually need to stick around and hear the answer. And if we're actually not really interested in how people are going, why even say how you go? And so in this developing this sense of optimism, it's really important that we have a support network around ourselves. You know, a Forbes article said that individuals who attended religious services regularly had been found to be more optimistic and have higher levels of life satisfaction. Additionally, those who reported feeling a sense of connection to a religious community were less likely to experience depression and anxiety. And it's interesting, my wife and I, over 27 years of marriage, we lived in different pockets of Sydney. We went and lived overseas in the UK for a couple of years, back to Sydney, up to the Hunter Valley, now down just 2 years ago. And that sense of community becomes really, really important. Because when you start doing life on your own, and I think that's one of the things that we discovered through those last couple of years when we weren't as able to be connected to others, was actually into how into our head that we can get. And it's really interesting, the stories, the chatterbox that goes on in our mind. And so it's really, really important that you're finding strategies to actually express your sense of gratefulness, to write down some of those things you're concerned about. And that's where that sense of journaling comes from. And if we have this greater sense of purpose, that we know that actually this is what I'm on earth for, this is what I'm about, this is what my life is about, and having this sense of being connected to something greater than ourselves becomes really, really important. And if you get to do that with a community of like-minded people and a supportive network, likewise, really, really important. And never lose that sense of awe and wonder. So, what community do you belong to? Who are some of the positive people in your life? What are some things you could volunteer for? What are you connected to? Take a moment and consider them, write some of them down, and maybe that's something for you to be considering over the Easter period. It's interesting that we often, as a schoolie, we often say to kids, you know, show me your kids' friends and I'll show you the person that you're going to become. Our friends, our connections, our networks are really, really important in life. And it's really important that we are made to be in community with other people. And keeping that sense of hope and optimism alive means you cannot do it on your own. It's interesting, for a long time, I sort of set up a little bit of a thing, a home gym in the garage, and I'd go out there on my own, and that did a trick for quite a while. But I just sort of felt myself just going through motions because it was sort of the thing to do, and I was just going through motions, and I'd never really been in a gym in my life before, and so a few years ago, I joined a gym for the first time in my life. And it was just even being around like-minded people to encourage one another and likewise receive encouragement and spur one another on. And these are people that I don't even see outside of the gym, but we know we see each other at the same time every morning. We're the first people we see. Even before I see my spouse, I see these people at the gym. And with just that sense of encouragement and spurring one another on becomes really, really important on this journey of hope and optimism. Optimistic people were more likely to engage in healthy behaviors such as exercising and eating a healthy diet. So, being an optimistic person isn't just about actually walking around with that sort of that Tigger, character trait. Actually, it has ongoing benefits for our mental health as well as for our physical health. So, how is it that we can develop some of these optimistic behaviors? Having a sense of purpose, having a sense of being connected to other people, and actually being in that community of like-minded people that we're moving towards something that we really, really believe in. Yeah, that's it. When we're optimistic, we are more likely to approach challenges with a sense of curiosity and creativity. We're willing to try new things and explore different solutions. And when we inevitably face setbacks and failures, we are able to bounce back more quickly and learn from our experiences. This sense of having an optimistic, positive outlook on life is really, really vital in actually our ability to work in the workspace. How do we bring a sense of curiosity and creativity? And I'm not sure what industries you're all involved in, but I do know that one of the things they're talking to school students about at the moment is developing this sense of creative problem solving. What does that look like for adults? And how does that look like for adults if we've lost that sense of awe and wonder? And awe and wonder is that sense of possibilities and futures and what ifs and how else. And actually, if we've started to become a little bit cynical and that won't work and it wouldn't work in this situation, we start to lose that sense of curiosity and creativity, which even can start to affect how we are in the workplace. Are we willing to try new things and explore different solutions? So I went to a restaurant the other day with a couple of friends, and I'd never been to this restaurant before. And they'd been there a number of times. And so they order the same thing every single time. I say to the chef, just bring me what you recommend. And they look at me in horror, like, you're not going to make the decision? No, I'm going to put myself out there and I'm going to put my meal in the hands of the person who knows the best. They're in the kitchen, they know what they do, and I'm going to trust them. These are little things. Are we willing to try new things and explore different solutions? Or have we become somewhat that sense, that creature of habit? It's interesting as to when that's a good thing. E.g., talking to my 17-year-old son about making your bed at the first thing of every day. That's a good habit. That's a good creature of habit to become. But are there other areas of life that we're willing to try? And putting yourself out there into that space is helping to develop that sense of optimism, of new things, of wondering, of I've never been in this space before, so I wonder what else could become. And it's that sense of wonder. I wonder, and maybe for some of us, we make a little sign, put a wonder sign on our computer just to keep us wondering every single day, because we are inevitably going to face setbacks and failures. There is not one person with us tonight that wouldn't have been hit by family tragedy, by health issues, by financial concerns. Not one of us. None of us are immune from these situations. And so how is it that we can actually bounce back from them more quickly? How is it that we can learn from experience? How is it that when we face setbacks and failures, we're able to keep this sense of I have a sense of hope and I have a sense of optimism. I have a sense of hope because I've got a greater purpose and there is something bigger that I'm a part of. I have a sense of hope because I've got a community around me that believes in me and strengthens me. I have a sense of hope and optimism because there's this sense of awe and wonder in the world in which I live. And I'm not going to just start taking it for granted, but I'm going to actually find joy in that sense of awe and wonder. You know, when your kids start to grow up, when they're young, all you could do was wait for them to grow up, and then they grow up and all you want to do is have them be nice and small again. Find the joy in some of the smaller things in life, because as we continue to find joy in the small things in life, that is going to keep us with that sense of a positive outlook on life. And that positive outlook on life shines through in having that sense of optimism. Optimistic individuals are positive about events daily. Research carried out says there's been positive correlations between optimism and physical and mental health well-being. Optimistic subjects tend to have more frequently protective attitudes, are more resilient to stress, and are inclined to use more appropriate coping strategies. So what are your coping strategies? When we face setbacks and failures, what are your coping strategies? Researchers said optimistic subjects tend to have more frequently protective attitudes, are more resilient to stress, and are more inclined to use the appropriate coping strategies. And I think the key word there is appropriate, because there's only so many drinks of a nighttime that becomes an inappropriate coping strategy. So, faith and optimism can help us build resilience and maintain a positive outlook by implementing practical strategies such as practice gratitude. Take time each day. That's that journaling. That's that waking up 10 minutes earlier that I talked about. But put it in your calendar. Set your alarm 10 minutes earlier now as you're listening. If you wake up to your phone, set it early now, just 10 minutes. Take time each day to focus on the positive things in your life, such as your health, your family, your job, your friends, the area you live in, the holiday you had, the holiday you're going to have. And this practice of that sense of gratitude, the meal that we get to enjoy, the air conditioning to cool you down at nighttime, and start with some of those small things. Connect with others. So whether it's through a religious service, like some of those other quotes earlier said, or whether it's joining a community group or volunteering or connecting with others, can help foster that sense of belonging and connectedness, which promotes that sense of hope and optimism, especially when it's around a shared purpose. Find meaning and purpose. Identify what gives your life meaning and purpose and pursue it. Go after it. I remember as a young guy, many, many years ago, I watched a movie called To Serve with Love, and I saw the way that that man interacted and made a difference in those kids' lives. And from that moment on, I wanted to be that guy. I wanted to be someone who made a positive difference in people's lives. And that's that sense of purpose. It can give you a sense of direction. It gives you that sense of being anchored. It gives you some control over where you're going. And it saves you getting hit left and right. If things don't quite work out, it's okay, because you know that you're on this path because of this purpose. Practice mindfulness, which we talked about. Engage in mindfulness meditation. Focus on the present moment. Cultivate a sense of gratitude, compassion, right? Journal it. Listen to the right types of podcasts. Listen to the right types of music at the right time. These are really interesting habits. And I find it interesting in life as to some of the habits that we choose to listen to and think on, and those that we don't. You know, I'm not sure how many of you still smoke cigarettes in the audience, but we know that the marketing says it's really bad for your health. So for however many percentage of the population, we go, okay, well, that's bad for you, I won't do it. We know fruit and vegetables are good for us, and it's optional extra. We know that mindfulness is really good for our mental health, for our spiritual health and our emotional health. And that for some reason, so many of us think of it as an optional extra. I would encourage you to practice that sense of mindfulness in whatever your sphere of being connected to something greater is, wherever your faith is at this point in time. That sense of mindfulness is really, really important. That in this world of apps and notifications constantly, find that 10 minutes every single day to practice gratitude, to reflect on your purpose, to be thankful for the people that are around you and connecting with you, and take care of your physical health. Look after what you eat and exercise and get enough sleep. All of those things combined work towards giving you that positive outlook. And when one of those areas is out of whack in your life, when you don't have synergy in all of those areas, it is going to affect your ability to maintain that positive outlook and to still be optimistic about the day to come. And I sit here tonight and I share this with you. And one of the reasons why I love being a part of Wellbeing Australia is because it's a group that actually supports one another on this journey, because we all have challenges. We have all had really good highs. We've all had really tough challenges. And then there's a lot of mundane in between. Our habits set us through the mundane of life, just the coming and going of daily life. But they're also really equipping us for when the challenges come. And they are going to come. There's potentially people watching tonight in a job that you don't necessarily love. And so getting up each day takes a real effort. There's potentially stress in family. And so how do I maintain that positive outlook on life? And I would encourage you that it's not just going to change overnight, but by starting small and starting with different behaviors and attitudes, you can choose to be optimistic. You can choose to have hope, but it's where you're putting that hope in. And it's the practices and the behaviors that go with it, which are going to help you set up for that future, that optimistic, that hopeful, wondrous future, because we live in an amazing world full of awe and wonder. And we get to do it with incredible family and friends around us. And I trust that every single one of you have got those people in your sphere of influence. Thank you.
Darren, I've got a really great question that's come in. It says, how do we give hope and optimism to others who may not be feeling hopeful or optimistic?
Yeah. So I think some of that is around, for me, trying to help other people discover their purpose and trying to help other people connect with others becomes a really important part in that journey. And that's where, if we've established some really good habits in our own life, that people can see, geez, there's something just a little bit different around the way you handle some of the things that come your way. I can see something a little bit different in the way that actually your outlook on life every single day. If they can see that in us because we've established some of those things, it then becomes a little bit easier for us to try and pass them on and to share it and to do that journey. And then it's that notion of we all live in the past, the present, and the what is to come. We have all had tough times in the past, and they are real, and we need to validate that they are real. But then we live in a present. And so it's about which parts of the past are we hanging on to and which parts of the future are we looking forward to. And it's about living in equal balance in those three, because you can't just completely live in the past and you can't completely live in the future. So it's about how do we actually live in the past, present, and future in a really balanced way to support people in those spaces.
Thanks, Darren. Are you happy if we move into the formal?
Yeah.
I didn't want to cut your slide presentation off.
Go for it. Which was done by my beautiful daughter, so she did a great job for me.
Kudos to her.
Absolutely, it's not my strength.
Once again, she's made you look really good.
Yeah.
Mate, you had me at one of the earlier slides when you talked about gratitude and compassion. When we experience that and display that and have those attributes, it lowers levels of stress and anxiety. I just don't think modern society gives enough credit to that.
Yeah.
When we talk about expressing gratitude and compassion, people often think that's too simplistic.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes we'd like to overcomplicate feelings and value and so on, and then underestimate the strength of gratitude and compassion.
Yeah, I agree. Many years ago, there's this notion that I throw out there sometimes, and it's that notion of be spiritually natural, but also be naturally spiritual. Like, why is being grateful and expressing gratitude seen as this thing? Why is actually showing compassion to another person? Why is that seen as such that should be a natural expression? And whilst it's a deep spiritual and emotional, it comes from a spiritual and emotional place, we should be able to express it in a natural way. And if we actually all had interactions that became that natural, oh gosh, we'd take a lot of stress out of the world and we'd take a lot of anxiety out of people's lives. And so for me, it's about how do we actually provide space for those interactions to be able to really occur meaningfully for people.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And if I can just share a little anecdote about gratitude, I do marathon road cycling. So a Saturday and Sunday is often consumed by doing 130, 150 kilometres. And occasionally at 90 or 100 Ks into a training ride, I hit that wall, of pain and discomfort and displeasure, normally in myself, as why am I doing this? But then I play a bit of a mind game, and I apply gratitude when I think about how many people would love to be able to do this, to get out in the open, ride a bike, feel good in the sunshine. And when I get that, I only think about it for 10 seconds, but that gives me enough energy to continue. And it's just an amazing concept.
Yeah, it comes back to what I said, like we know the importance of sleep. We know the importance of exercise. Well, we know that there are certain behaviors that are going to help us handle stress in life a lot easier. We know there's going to be certain behaviors that are going to actually help us deal with setbacks and failures. And yet for some reason, journaling or expressing gratitude or whatever be is seen as it's an optional extra. And then like we're surprised when all of a sudden I'm overcome and I'm overwhelmed with stress and whatever. Actually put these practices in daily. Just make it a daily habit. Find 5 fine things. Set your alarm on your phone 3 times in the day just to ding at 3 random different times. And when it dings, I'm going to find 2 things to be grateful for. Like there are certain things like that we can, if we don't have a natural inclination to live life that way, there are certain things that we can do then to actually force us into that space.
And practicing so it becomes routine, I think is another key. Otherwise, we just get out of the habit.
Yeah, agree. And I had a father who was in the military growing up, so discipline was a way of life, right? But I do have some things like that in the morning when we wake up. If you wake up 10 minutes earlier, there's no other appointments that are going to get in your road. Yeah. No matter what time you wake up, 10 minutes earlier, there's no other appointment scheduled. So therefore, just wake up 10 minutes earlier. Go to bed 10 minutes earlier at the other end of the day if that's going to help you. But wake up 10 minutes earlier because there's nothing at 5:30 or 5:50 or 6:15 apart from you getting yourself up and going for the day. So therefore, wake up 10 minutes earlier and use that as a time. Or when you're sitting on a bus or you're sitting in traffic in Sydney, actually, I'm going to choose to put positive things into my mind. I'm going to choose to listen to that type of podcast or that type of music or whatever else it be, rather than so that you're actually putting good things in so that then good things will come out.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I've got a couple of more questions that have come in for you. Yeah. Is hope and optimism the same as happiness?
I'm not a world expert here, by the way, Glenn, so you feel free to help me out at any point in time. I'm going to suggest no. I find that happiness is an emotion that I experience in a point of time. My football team wins. At the moment, they're 5-0, so I'm very happy. All right, very happy. But that's an in the moment thing, because when they lose, and at the end of last year they lost 6 in a row, I wasn't happy. But I still had hope and optimism. Like that was not sort of connected. So I think we're looking that happiness, because there's going to be times where you're frustrated. There's going to be times where you're angry, right? And for me, happiness sits in them. I think there's a difference between happiness and joy. And I would suggest that joy actually can be linked to that sense of hope, because actually I have this something that is greater, that isn't just based on my current circumstance that makes me happy, because I'm also going to be angry, sad, frustrated, whatever. But joy for me is a deeper sense of keeping me going in life. That would be my perspective.
Yeah, no, that's a brilliant answer. Okay, the next question is, I'm not a religious person, so how else can I develop my spirituality?
Yeah, and I love these questions like that. This person, we could sit with a lovely glass of something and just have a conversation about that sense of spirituality and how every person finding their way to experience that for themselves or to express that for themselves. Because I think sometimes for a lot of us, we probably just aren't necessarily spiritually aware. Like when I've traveled numerous times through different Asian countries and things like that, there's this sense of spirituality. When you travel through India, like I've had the chance to do a number of times, there's this sense of spirituality now, whether it's that God or that God or that God or what, that's individual's choice. But there is this sense actually we're a spiritual person. And I think sometimes we lose that here because I don't know, because we feel weird, because Australians don't sort of, shouldn't express whatever, but actually helping each other get in touch with that sense of spirituality. And we're all going to express that differently and explore it differently. And, some of us find it in nature, some of us find it in that God, some of us find it in that, wherever it be, that's each person's decision and where they're at with that. But gosh, I think there's an important sense of actually being aware of that, because that sense of peace, that's a spiritual sense that even when things can be coming around me and gosh, I've got stress financially at the moment, I'm not loving work, so that's not a wonderful thing at the moment. I've got a kid who's doing life a bit tough over there. So how can I still live with a sense of peace in that space and that hope in that space? And that becomes really, really important as to actually that's that spiritual stuff, so that you're not just constantly having your head swirling around with every single different thing that comes your way. So, yeah, I don't know if that really answers the question, but I would encourage all of us to find a trusted person and just sit down and let's talk about it and explore that sense of how does spirituality feel for me? Where do I experience it? And if it hasn't been something that's been a part of your life, go, oh yeah, but I can know that when I experienced that, I felt this or this meant that to me. And let's unpack that a little bit further to see what that means.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And if I can reflect on, my black fellow values and ways, I'm not a religious person in the sense of, following a faith, of whatever, denomination. But I and I know many other black fellas, we refer to listening to our ancestors.
Right.
Finding that space where we can connect.
Right.
And for me personally, that's in a quiet place at home out in our bushland.
Yep.
I can have the weight of the world on me. I can go out there and find and connect, and I get responses, I get answers, I get clarity. I only ever assume that's spirituality,
right?
And I don't connect religion and spirituality. So I
Agreed.
guess it's different for different people.
Yeah, and I think that's a really key point in there. Actually, there's a difference between that sense of faith and spirituality and religion, right? Like they're a couple of different things, right? Like I would suggest that some of our religious activity, hopefully when it's done well, is because there's a group of like-minded people, and actually they just sort of structure it somewhat, right? That's when it's going well, and then we know what it looks like in its worst form. But there's a big difference between your own sense of spirituality and religiosity. They're two different words and two different concepts. Like I talk to, I now joke that I'm the only bloke on the northern beaches who can't ride a surfboard, right? But when you listen to the blokes who go surfing, and they sit out the back, they come in and they just go, Coxie, you're just out there and you just feel so different. And everything that can be happening on the shore for life, for that, however long they're sitting out the back on the board, it's just them and the waves and the currents. And I would suggest that actually that's where they're experiencing their sense of spirituality.
Yep.
And so I think that it's just a little bit of finding ways that we can actually help people unpack what that means. And I mentioned earlier, find a chair, find a space on your land, or on your farm, or at a headland, but find a space out in the waves because that's where that able to just being able to breathe through it, express your gratitude, and that sense of mindfulness, being part of something bigger, is really, really important.
Yeah, excellent. Now, my friend, we could go
Yeah,
on
you and I could do
for
this all
hours
night.
and hours
Yeah.
About this, and I'm sure we would bring the audience along with us. But we do have to be respectful
Yeah.
of people's times,
Absolutely.
and also acknowledge that it is getting dark now.
Yes.
In fact, I'm looking out the window and it's very dark.
Yeah.
Darren, I'd like to sincerely thank you for your time tonight and your insights. And if everyone online can give you a virtual applause, that would be much appreciated. But no, in all seriousness, thank you very much. I think there's been a whole range of nuggets that you've shared with us, and it'll give people some pieces of information to go away and explore a bit further. They don't have to take the 15 things you talked about. Just pick up one or two and use that. And you mentioned about Easter as a good time for reflection. I heard a nice saying today where people go, "Oh, I always look at the start of a new year to change my weight," and then this other person says, "Use Easter."
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be the 1st of January. It can be any time.
Right.
So,
Right.
I would share that with our audience today. Go and find that little bit of time out and just reflect on some of the things you've said.
Yeah.
So once again, thank you, and thank you to all of our attendees for giving up your time. But hopefully, you have learned a couple of things and you've appreciated some value out of tonight's session. There will be a support slide on view by our administrator, so hopefully people can reflect on that and reference that if they need to. We'll also send out a survey to all the attendees. And please take the minute or two to respond back to that, because we love getting feedback. And in the spirit of continuous improvement, what we don't know, we can't improve. So we're very open to offers and suggestions on improvement. So feel free to do that. I would encourage people to join our next session, which is scheduled for the 23rd of May. And you can look out across socials for those invites. They'll be going out shortly. But our topic of that webinar will be the power of language on mindset and others. And this session will be led by Maria LaPetria, who is a renowned expert in that field. There's also the opportunity to join our Wellbeing series by subscribing or becoming a member today. And again, reference back to our website for those contact details. So on behalf of the directors and our wonderful volunteers at Wellbeing Australia, I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. Please enjoy the rest of the evening and have a wonderful Easter break. Thank you.